This show has been brought to you by FBA Speakers. We hold the diaries for Will Cherland, Anthony Lee and myself, Danny McMillan. If you'd like to book us for your conference or event, visit fbaspeakers.com for more details. Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Today we bring in my friend Chris. Chris, how you doing?
I'm going fantastically well. Thank you, Danny. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Okay, Chris, do you want to give the audience a little bit of background on yourself?
Sure. I'm a product developer, sort of an inventor, an entrepreneur in a sense. I worked in SEO for quite a few years, so I've got a bit of online marketing experience. For many years, I've had my own business running kind of on the side. In the last few years, I've actually kind of jumped the fence and decided to go all in on being an entrepreneur and trying to develop my own products.
Excellent. And today we're going to be talking about that. What is the product in question and we're going to be speaking about today? Sure.
Well, today I thought we'd focus on the flagship product in my range, which is called the Hibernate Sleep Mask. And that was actually originally conceived way back in 1992 when I used to work night shift. So I'll try and keep this short because it's quite a long time ago. And I was having trouble sleeping during the day because I lived on a busy main road. And what happened was that my father and brother were actually running a factory together, which was the world's most boring factory. But what they did was, it was a die cutting factory amongst other things. And they used to cut foam for car interiors, that sort of thing. And that foam had acoustic qualities. In other words, it dampened a bit of sound. So I rang my brother one day because earplugs would kind of drive me crazy. And I said, can you send me some of that foam? And what I did was I created a bandana.
Yep.
And I cut two small kind of circles or squares. I can't quite remember what shape it was, and then I sort of jammed them up against my ears, these two bits of foam, and that worked okay. And it blocked a bit of sound. And then it wasn't until 1999 that I went traveling with my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and we were in Southeast Asia. It was very noisy with roosters getting up at 4:30 in the morning, and I just wished that I brought my product. And the internet was kind of getting going. There was a big .com boom was happening. E-commerce was really starting to rear its head. And I thought, look, when I get home after this 6 months trip away, I'd like to commercialize this idea. And that's what happened. And so that was really the first iteration of the product. I'll probably keep going here, Danny, actually, because there's a bit more to it to get to the point where we really, it gets into some serious development. But so nothing really happened having launched a website and gone e-commerce. And ultimately, what I did was I learned how to rank products on Google. So my website actually ranked very well for search terms like sleep mask and eye mask and lots of related queries. So that product was in combination with a mask and these foam pads that I'd sort of covered with some fabric. But the upshot was that the sales started rocking in, and I was probably turning over maybe 150,000 US a year and making profit of maybe 30%, so about 40 to 50,000.
Yeah.
But again, just as a part-time thing, I was still working full-time. And cut a long story very short, the reviews on the product weren't that great, but this was sort of before the days of social media. And then when YouTube really got going, some people started unboxing and trying out my product, and they didn't like it. So I knew that around 2009 and 10 that I needed to redevelop it completely. So I found a product development company here in my hometown of Melbourne in Australia called Cobalt Niche, who were really good, and they catered up a design. There was lots of prototyping, and this was all done in Australia. And eventually I was holding in my hand a couple of reasonably soft silicon earmuffs. And then I just found a seamstress to put it all together to create a prototype. And then to prove demand, I decided to kickstart the project.
You still there, Chris?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yep.
So you went to Kickstarter. So now we've got the backstory. Can we just back up a little bit? Let's walk through, like, you really went ghetto iterations, didn't you? Sounds like you're sticking bits of foam on your ears in the very beginning. Talk us through the humble beginnings. This is pre-Amazon, this is pre-product design as we maybe see today. And there's less technology going back in 92 to 99 period. How are you prototyping these?
Well, obviously I had the foam bits, and then what I did was, because really there was no commercialization until about the year 2000.
Right.
That was after I got back. So I went to my brother's and father's factory and grabbed a whole sheet of this foam. And then what I did was I found a seamstress. Her name was Simona Sahara, I think her name was. Anyway, she was very lucky because there was lots of seamstresses and tailors at the time that I was literally walking door to door down the main roads of shopping strips trying to find a tailor or someone that could help me to make a sleep mask that was kind of luxurious and lovely that would go with, with these ear pads. So there was a lot of that sort of door knocking, and eventually I found a lady that was here to help, and she helped me manufacture, I think it was my first 600 units to get me in business. But I mean, look, there was a lot of little nitty bits in between, but you've got to be pretty tenacious to just sort of keep going and believing in an idea, even if I don't even know if the idea was ever going to work. So, it wasn't that big a risk, but it was, it was just fun. It was fun. And, I felt really proud when I finally had it all packaged and ready to go.
Yeah. So let's fast forward now. Let's talk about the product development as of today. So what did you do? Did you draw it up in CAD, or did you have a CAD person working on this, or SketchUp? How did that process work?
Well, with Cobalt Niche actually did the sort of the fundamental design, and that actually hasn't changed for probably the most important part of the product, which is the ear cups or the silicone muffs.
Yeah.
So that CAD file's actually just continued to be iterated on in lots of different forms. Like those cups are really the focus of everybody's attention. So mainly because they don't block 100% of sound. I think a lot of people expect them to be like a regular set of earmuffs, and I try my very best in my sales copy to say, look, these are not 100% sound blocking like any earmuff. They don't block as much as an industrial set of earmuffs or those really hard ones.
Yeah.
But they may reduce the sound enough to help you relax and meditate and travel and, perhaps sleep next to a snoring partner, that sort of thing. And so for a lot of people, it actually is quite effective.
Yeah.
But you do always get some on the fringe that just go, this is complete garbage. And that's reflected in my star ratings on Amazon, for example, which is only about 3.5. But we still sell maybe 10 to 15 units a day.
Yeah. No, do you know it's quite interesting? Because obviously you get that stage where people will always say that you must have at least 4.5 stars to sell a product, but it really is product dependent. I've got a product that does, I think is at 3.3 stars, and similar to you have problems with it, with educating the audience, even though you spell it out. But that still sells through well, and all kind of traditional FBA sellers who've been on courses, then everyone's fighting to get 5-star consistent reviews. But with some products that are maybe slightly unique because they're not like standard eye masks, they coexist with ear muffs as well in theory. Then
that's
you sometimes get away with a little bit more, can't you? Flexibility on the reviews. Ideally, you want 5 stars, but I'm just saying it doesn't mean you're dead in the water if you've got lower stars in all the cases.
Yeah, and I think the main reason for that too, Danny, is because the product itself really doesn't have any significant competition. So one of the things that I did, just rolling back actually, was that the reason why I came up with earmuffs for sleeping as a new, one of the reasons why I actually decided to completely redevelop the product was because of my SEO background. And while I was actually doing some work way back, I think it was around about 2009, Google had just released, maybe in 2008 or 9, but it had released Google Suggest, that sort of, when you go to Google and you prompt it there's all these drop downs of suggested search terms that users type in. And I actually, while I didn't have earmuffs at the time, I decided to type earmuffs into Google. And I think even today, if you type earmuffs into Google and don't press enter, you'll see earmuffs for kids and earmuffs for shooting. And somewhere on the list, you'll see earmuffs for sleeping. And I saw that. And what I was able to do then was click that result to see who was selling earmuffs for sleeping, because that was kind of what I had. And it turned out that nobody was. So I knew that there was demand, because obviously that search term wouldn't be in the suggested search term list. And I knew that no one was actually meeting that demand. So people were looking for a product but it didn't exist. So that was one of the original impetuses to redevelop it and actually make earmuffs instead of ear pads.
Yeah.
And so today, because of the SEO that I've done in the age of my domain, it's been around since 2001, what it's meant is that I pretty much dominate that space. In fact, I've been incredibly lucky not to have a competitor ever really come in, and I think it's because I'm a little bit under the radar. It doesn't really sell enough. It's not as that popular. I don't think anybody's come in to copycat it yet. Yeah. Cross your fingers, no one listening to this is going to decide to do that. But if you go to any search engine, Bing, Yahoo, Google, maybe even YouTube, and certainly on Amazon in the United States, you type those keywords or similar keywords in, and that's I'm there, and there isn't anybody else. So, and people are quite desperate. They're sick of earplugs, or they've got problems with earplugs. They're getting infections because of earplugs, and so sort of in that really interesting spot where even though it's not ranked or rated that well, people just are prepared to give it a try. And that's the great thing about Amazon too, is that because they can get a refund. And look, my refund rates do sit at around anywhere between 8 and 10%, so I'm a lot higher than most.
Yeah. Makes sense. So let's get into the nitty gritty of the development phase. So we've just covered about how with regard to using agency for doing the CAD work, etc. How did you prototype? What was that stage? Because like some people can use metal fabrication, and some people can use like 3D printing. How did you prototype before you start getting to the factory into mass production?
Look, a lot of that prototyping was actually done by the agency, by Cobalt Niche. So, and there was about 4 rounds of prototyping from memory, and that was a cost of around probably about $15,000, maybe $18,000 Australian. So it's probably about maybe 14 or 15,000 US. Yeah. So it wasn't cheap, and well, I guess maybe it is cheap. I don't know, but anyway, but this is also in Australian dollars. Had I done all this work, and in fact, I have done this sort of work later with some Chinese partners, it's been a lot cheaper. Yeah. But you've got a sort of a Western design team, and that's no slight on the Chinese. In fact, I think that the Chinese are getting a lot better at design. But at the time, I didn't even know that Alibaba existed. Like, I just had no relationship with China at all. And basically, though, Danny, what happened was that after the Kickstarter project, we actually delivered to the backers within about 4 months. So everything was ready to go. I had all the suppliers in Australia ready to go. We did the Kickstarter campaign. We raised about $110,500 US. So it wasn't a spectacular success, but it was enough for me to go, yeah, I'm definitely onto something. We delivered to the Kickstarter backers, but because we rushed it, we were trying to do everything from Australia, and everything was being manufactured offshore and then being imported by sea freight and stuff like that. And then we were trying to rush the packaging and then get them out. Thousands of orders. I think it was over 2,500 orders went out all over the world. The feedback shortly afterwards was pretty poor on the Kickstarter campaign. So a lot of people were saying it wasn't a very good product. It was half baked and that sort of stuff. And that's kind of fair enough. But I do think, though, that when you're trying to do a Kickstarter project, you're actually backing an idea that the creator has. And I hope that, I know that some people don't have this expectation, but this was just sort of like the iPhone 1. Like, it was kind of the beginning of a journey, and I'm eternally grateful to those Kickstarter backers for supporting an idea, even though it wasn't perfect. And I do, I'm kind of sorry that it wasn't great, but I'm grateful that I've been able to sort of continue on and help a lot of people with their sleep. But what happened was, though, that soon after the Kickstarter project, we actually moved to Hong Kong. And having moved to Hong Kong, I knew that, and I was aware at this stage that Amazon was going, because in 2013, when I did a Kickstarter project, the first iteration of the Amazing Selling Machine had come out in July, which was exactly the same time as I was running Kickstarter. So as much as I wanted to do the Amazing Selling Machine, I was just too busy with Kickstarter to even think about it. But I knew that I wanted to do Amazon. But after the Kickstarter project, I knew that I couldn't do Amazon because I knew that the reviews would tank based on what I had. So what I ended up doing was going to a trade show in Hong Kong, my very first one in April. I think it was in 2015, 2014, sorry, and met a man called George, who was a Western guy who I showed my product to him because he had similar type of products using silicon, which is a sort of the product I was using. He was using silicon molds and had his own designs there. And George looked at the e-cups and he came up with some suggestions, and we worked together for a whole year to prototype and fix those as best we could to improve the performance of those cups. And then it wasn't until 2015 that I was able to actually finally launch on Amazon.
Right. So it's been quite a long road for you, a rocky road in some cases.
Very.
But
Yeah,
you
very. It's
got the
been.
opportunity to get a lot of feedback along the way. Do you think as well with like what you said, it's one of those, you're resolving part of the issue, aren't you, in terms of reducing or attenuating some of the noise, but not completely blocking it out. And it's hard to get that across to the customer because they want perfection. But even with earplugs, because I use wax earplugs, so I have eye mask and wax earplugs to, I try and optimize my sleep, I reduce the heat in the room, thin layers of clothing, all the things, a darkened room, the earplugs so that I can optimize so I get decent sleep. It's very important, as you know. So it's one of those things is that along the way you've got a lot of feedback. Some of it is criticism, I think your next challenge now is that how do we get across to those people? Look, it won't be 100%. Maybe it's an insert or something. Just to say, you've just bought this product. Please be aware you will not be 100%. If you have any problem, do you see what I mean? Because you're almost solving the problem, but it's almost like you need, in some cases, if people want to go that full stretch, that 100%, not 100%, but less noise, more noise reduction, that something has to go into the ear canal, doesn't it? To achieve that.
Yeah, it does.
So if you thought have you thought about a part of your set actually, or would it work? Like you've got one where it's kind of dampens the sound, that it goes over your ears, like the ear muff things, and then you actually put earplugs in as well. That is part of the set. Have you considered that?
I have. In fact, I have actually included earplugs in the past with the product. And what that's done is actually let customers down. They fed back that, why would I need earplugs? Like, I can go and buy earplugs. Like, this thing's supposed to do everything. Yeah. And so I had exactly the same thought process as you, but in the end, it's just better, in my opinion, not to include them. It just creates more problems, in fact. And look, Amazon has reviews all over it, so folks can make up their own mind, and they do. Most people read the reviews. They're not all great, that's for sure. And I read every single one of them, and I take on board all the feedback, and I work with my supplier and designers to try and improve based on the feedback that we receive. Yeah.
It's brilliant. I'm loving your honesty, because the whole point of these episodes is for Amazon sellers that don't do this already, is to try and start developing their own products. And from the criticisms you may have seen, or the feedback, the constructive feedback, is that people can learn from that themselves to apply that to their own products when they go into development, because there's enough moving parts going on already as a private label seller. But once you introduce product design as well, that's a whole new level, isn't it? So there's more attributes that can actually go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely a lot more personally involved with the product. There's no doubt about that, and it does hurt when you get a bad review, but it's also incredibly heartwarming when you get a great review, because this is you. I made this thing. It's me. I'm in this thing. Yeah, totally. It's really hard to explain. It's a very hard thing to let go. I almost sold the company last year, but I actually couldn't let it go.
It becomes
I just want
personal.
to see this through in a way. Yeah, it's almost obsessive and almost to my commercial detriment.
So anyway, just to wrap up now, but where are we at in terms of the factory? Is there anything you put in place? How did you take it from the prototype stage to the manufacturing at scale? I mean, how did the mechanics of that work?
Well, pre-Kickstarter, in fact, during the Kickstarter campaign, while we went into manufacture, everything was handled by Australian companies that had hooks into China. So there was a lot of extra margin plonked on top of what I now know was a pretty expensive unit cost. Having been lucky enough to spend a couple of years in Hong Kong, I was able to find all through trade shows and word of mouth some fantastic suppliers in China, mainly around Guangzhou, and because it's just across the border, and so I still work with and have a strong personal relationship. In fact, one of them is actually coming to Australia in 2 weeks, and we'll be hopefully staying at my house and having a barbecue and doing that sort of stuff. So yeah, look, a lot of it's relationship building and look, I probably pay even more than I need to with these suppliers, but the point is that they handle everything. They handle all the QC and yeah.
Excellent. And so where do you see yourself going now then, the next phase? You've obviously learned an incredible amount on this product. Do you think, have you got ideas for other products that you can take the learnings from this and apply to the new ones?
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
You don't have to name them on the show.
Oh no, it's all right. I mean, look, I've had a few sort of product. I mean, the Hibernate is just one example of several that we could have chatted about. There's another one which is my sleep headphones, which I'm re-engineering at the moment.
Yeah.
Because there's been some issues with that, and that's a whole other story. Currently, I'm actually talking to you using a set of headphones that are a prototype for a new product that I'll be releasing I hope in the next 4 months.
Yeah.
Really happy with these headphones. They're designed for sleeping as well. So at the moment they're using wires, but we've already got our eye on Bluetooth as a second, as the logical step forward from there. So I have a product pipeline in my mind, which it's actually in a spreadsheet, which I've shared with my suppliers. And, when the funds become available, because I try and think, obviously, like most, PLers or product developers, you need to sink as much money into R&D and into production as you possibly can. So
Indeed.
I'm pretty frugal in the way I live. And, I happen to live in one of the most expensive bloody cities in the world, but there is a bit of a pipeline, but I do firmly have my eye on an exit out of the business probably in 2019, possibly towards the end of 2019. I think by then, I'm hoping that the products will be in good shape, reasonably good reviews, pretty solid margins, and good revenues coming in. So I'm really just sort of dressing up the business a little bit for sale, but I need more products.
Cool. Sounds good. All right, let's wrap there, Chris. Thank you for coming in. How can people reach you?
Well, they can reach me at chris@hibernate.com. It's probably the easiest way. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, guys, thank you for joining us again. Chris, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.